Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Mary Rabago, Journalism with the Purpose. Thank you so much for joining us as we do every Wednesday. Thank you for sharing this space, this time with us. And you know, my request as we start the show, this is a social media show. So please, if you can do me the favor of sharing this link as I'm doing right now here with one hand. Hey, I'm being creative here. One hand only. So please go ahead and share this in your social media so more people can join our conversation. We have two topics that are very, very important for our community. We have homeless, but not just any kind of homeless. One of the communities that is more vulnerable in our community is 55 and older, our senior citizens. And unfortunately, we see a huge number of people homeless at that age. So we're going to be talking to an organization, representatives of an organization that bring us really good information so we can keep in mind. And also, you will learn how you can help this organization so they can keep doing this wonderful work they do in our community. Now, another one of the topics that affects our community greatly is definitely when we talk about domestic violence, in particular to the immigrant community where there is a lack of information or a fear, for a lack of a better word, within the community also. It's very important that we provide these resources. Remember, this is Journalism with the Purpose. Con Mary Rabago, this is a safe space where we want to have your points of view, your questions in this conversation, so together we can learn and we can grow as a community. So with more to say today, we welcome to our studio, to our home, Barbara Lukowist. Did I say it right? Or baptized? Because I'm so good at baptizing. I keep saying that in one of my past lives, for those people that believe in that area, I had to be a priest because I tend to baptize everybody. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting us.
And you are representing Justice Center, correct?
Correct.
With Barbara is joining us also Rudy Solis. Thank you for being with us, Rudy.
Thank you for inviting.
And usually we start with the ladies, but Barbara, if you don't mind, I would like to start with Rudy today because Rudy has a powerful story. And one of my topics all the time, every time I do conference or I talk to my public, I keep reminding them how much power our story has. And Rudy, I would like for you to share with our audience today those moments when you found yourself homeless with no one around.
Yeah. I was homeless for about 5 years. I actually literally walked streets for about 2.5 years, just going to truck stops to taking showers and just trying to find a way for my means so I could eat, I could have, stay out of the streets in the middle of the night so I wouldn't get arrested.
Do you mind getting that? There we go, the mic, so we can hear you better. There we go.
And it was my way that I had to survive. I was homeless. I stayed with my son for a year, but I didn't want to become more of a burden to them than they already had problems, now, financially.
Help us in this process, Rudy. How does someone end up being homeless?
In my situation, it was a medical issue. My back got damaged. I ended up having arthritis, and I started having a deterioration of my disc. So my doctors took me off of work, so I had to apply for my disability. And fighting for disability wasn't an easy battle. It was a fight so I could try to get help. But it took me like 4.5 years, almost 5 years to be able to claim it and get it.
And while this process, you ended up to be homeless.
I was homeless. I lost my condo. I lost my truck. I lost all my possessions. I lost everything that I had, it was all gone from one day to another. Now,
there is a bad connotation that when we think about homeless, we think about people that are either in drugs, in bad habits, a lot of mental issues, people that make the wrong choices. But it's not the case, Barbara.
No, not at all. And I think that that's something that everyone needs to think about is you're really only one catastrophic event away from being homelessness. It can happen to any one of us. There can be a car accident. There can be a really strong, bad health problem. There could be a loss of your job. And then in the downturn of the economy about 4 years ago, there were a lot of people who found out they didn't have their pensions, they didn't have their jobs. A lot of those people became homeless. And so it's people like you and I who really are the growing population of homelessness. It's people who have had things and then a certain incident happens and they slide into homelessness. It's estimated that about 40% of the population is one paycheck away from being homeless.
Wait a second. 40% of our population is only a paycheck away
Correct.
from homeless.
Correct.
Now, that's a statement.
It is because people are working at minimum wage jobs. The rent in big cities is getting higher. There aren't enough affordable housing units, and so people are struggling. And if they can't get help or if they don't qualify, if the federal level for you to get help is going to be raised, then a lot more people will lose benefits, and there'll be more people who are going to be homeless.
Now, this is a huge statement you just shared with us. And again, I have to emphasize that con Mary Rabago, our purpose behind the work that we do through social media, through the radio, depending if it's in English or Spanish, is definitely to educate our community on topics that not necessarily are the popular ones, but they're the ones that we need to be educated on. Right. Resources, and why we cannot exclude ourselves from that list of a 40% within that population that could end up homeless. Correct. And when we talk about homeless, usually we think about the youth, we think about families because of those situations, but rarely do we speak about the 55 and older, Rudy, which was your situation.
Yes.
Now, please, if you can put your mic closer, thank you, no problem. And when you say I ended up homeless for 5 years, that's a long time. You have to have family. What happened with that dynamic of the family?
I have family. I have my kids. But like I said, I lived with my oldest son for about a year. And in that, because I had no income, I had nothing to give back to them. And I started seeing that I was becoming a burden. They wouldn't tell me that. But I could see it. I could see it in their talks, in their discussions. And you know, I don't want to let my kids suffer for what I'm going through. And I just told my oldest boy, you know what? I need to go take care of me. And I just need to go and whatever it is that I got to battle through, I'm going to do it. Because if I gave up, then I would never be able to fight back and get back on my feet again.
Now, Rudy, you come from the Latino community. For those Latinos that are listening to our show, are watching the show right now, we have a tradition, a culture that we take care of our elders in many ways. But times are changing where both in the family are working, where we are in the sandwich generation that we're taking care of our parents, some of us, and then our kids also. And the strength and the responsibilities and the pressures are increasing also. Is that a tendency that you see changing and shifting within that cultural-based community when it comes to taking care of the elder? And that is probably a reason why so many of them are also ending up in the situation as Rudy?
Right. I think that it's a cultural phenomenon, not only for Latino families, but also for families that are very close religiously, for families that might be immigrant families, no matter whether they're from Syria or Mexico or anywhere else.
Wherever.
And I think also it's for families really of any religious background. It is very difficult now to take care of your elderly family. Sometimes there's other extenuating circumstances. Sometimes an elderly person might be with a family member who isn't that honest. And then the elderly person is very vulnerable. The family member might be taking their Social Security checks.
Abusing them also.
The family member might be they might be abused. They may not be able to take care of themselves, and so the health problems are kind of overwhelming. And we often have people who might be in wheelchairs, who have health problems, who are dropped off in front of our center.
Oh my God, that just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And we want to thank all of you guys that are sharing your comments, that are sharing this link, so more people within our community at broad, general community. This is a show, this is a space that we created in order for us to come together as a community. Doesn't matter your ethnicity, your background, your status. It's important for us to share this kind of conversations and information, resources, so we have access. The more education, the more knowledge that we have about these topics that are so necessary in our community, but we lack the conversation because it's not the popular thing. It's not, whatever is in fashion. So that's why we created the space of Journalism with a Purpose with Mary Rabago. We have a couple comments here. Robin Reed says, such an important topic for discussion. Thank you for addressing it. Thank you so much for your comment, and thank you for sharing the link also. Margaret Moreno Jañez. Hi, Mari. Very good topic. Thank you so much, Margaret, for always joining us. There are many people in this situation. And I remember as a journalist covering many stories about the homeless, particularly when it comes to Thanksgiving, the holidays. All of a sudden, the media and the community wants to do the right thing. But it's once a year. Rudy, from your experience being in the streets, after having your own family, having the ethics of, good working member of the community, how do you feel? Walk us through that experience for many of us that cannot even imagine walking on your shoes.
Honestly, I separated myself from everybody. I walked away from the town that I was raised at, the town that all my compadres, all my family, everybody was at, because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was homeless. I was embarrassed that here's a man that was making good money. Some of my kids went to college. We bought cars, we bought houses, we paid taxes. We were living the dream. Mm-hmm. And then from one day to another, things just started falling on me, and I had to accept that. But in accepting that, I became homeless, and dealing with that, there's a lot of different things that people don't realize when you become homeless, the things that happen to you, the transitions that you see. And the older you are, the harder it gets because the younger generation wants to take. And they do. Some seniors, you get beat. I had my backpack stolen from me from, just different people, different kids. It's a one thing where you have to start from now on, this minute on, is you have to watch every point that you're doing. You have to take care of yourself because
it's a survival mode.
Yes, you are in that. You are in that 24/7 because there is no rest.
Well, the good news is that the organization is Justice Center here to support not only the homeless, but I'm assuming education within the community. What are some of the things that you guys do, Barbara?
Justice Center really is a one-stop shop, and so everything that has to do with homeless people we can kind of take care of. The main thing is we want to create an atmosphere in which people feel like it's not disorienting, it's not demeaning, that they have respect and that they have dignity. That's a thing that a lot of people who become homeless, they lose that right away. If you think about the fact you might be on the street and you don't have an opportunity to take a shower, and think about how you feel at the end of the day when you're able to take a hot bath.
The basic necessities.
It's a simple thing like that. You're able to brush your teeth. You're able to use shampoo. You're able to have clean clothes, clean underwear and socks. And so Justice Center, you're able to have a cup of coffee in the morning. So we're open from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. 6 days a week. And then on Sunday, we're open from 7 to 1. So we're open 7 days a week. People start lining up at our door as early as 6 o'clock. And when we open at 7, they know that they can come in. We're going to address them by their name. We're going to say, hello, how are you, Mr. Smith? How are you, Mrs.
dignity of each person, it takes care of also there.
Would you like to sign up to take a shower? Do you need any clean clothes? Would you like to have a pastry and some coffee today? And be sure to talk to Michael because he has some ideas for you about finding some, some employment. And you need to talk to Tammy, our housing coordinator, because we think we might have found a place for you. And then also go and see Rudy, because Rudy, we just went to the food bank. We have a lot of collaborations with other organizations. And so at Justice Center, we're able to really try to solve any problem they have. And if we can't, then we have partners in the community like St. Mary's Food Bank, Area Agency on Aging, other agencies, Healthcare for the Homeless, that we have a nurse on site, and so we're able to do all sorts of things, but the ultimate goal is once we stabilize you, we want you to move into housing, because every senior deserves a place to call home.
Definitely. Imagine that, going through your life, raising a family, and find yourself homeless. That's the story that is sharing with us Rudy Solis today, but he's also going to share with us the amazing story of the transition and what is he doing now for people that are walking on the shoes that he walked many years ago. Before we go to that, I would love to share with you some of the comments, and thank you so much for joining us. Remember that this is Con Mary Rabago. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now also live on YouTube. This is a platform that we have created so we can share these resources and these conversations and these stories with the community, so we are more educated about these topics. And I'm sure you're going to find either a family member, somebody that you encounter some way in your walk of life, where you can offer this kind of resources and change their life. That is the journalism with the purpose that we do here with Con Mary Rabago. We have Angela Garrett that says, I have an uncle who is homeless, who served in the military, and due to mental illness, he chooses to be homeless. We all have tried to get help from him, but with no avail, no results. Is this common?
Yes, it is. There's, when I was out there, there's a lot of people that they'd rather just be left alone because they can't transition back into society. They're afraid to go back into society because they don't know how to handle it no more. They think that they're going to go back in there, and then again, in a month or two, they're going to find themselves homeless or with nothing again. So they're afraid to go back there and chance it, and it happens all the time. We meet members there and we talk to them, and I had this one gentleman tell me, hey, is it worth it, Rudy, weighing it out? He goes, I had a job, I had an apartment, and I lost it. Now I'm homeless again. Do I really want to work and pay rent? And I said, man, it's in your heart. For me, I'd rather have that roof over my head after what I experienced.
And we hear these words, and for most of us, and I'm sure the same thing is going through the head of the people that are watching us through social media right now. How could somebody prefer to be homeless? And, the hot summer or the cold winter, or not having a place to lay your head at night, not having, an opportunity to take a shower, the basic necessity that most of us take for granted. How is that possible? Where there are a lot of different topics and situations that come into places, right. Barbara and Rudy are telling us. We have more comments. Says Ali, what's up from all the way from Avondale? Shout out to Mary Rabago Productions. Thank you much for your support, Ali, and please do not forget to share this link so more people can get the resources that Justice Center is offering and is educating us today during this conversation. Olivia Cano Wells, Barbara and Rudy are amazing people. We love everything that Justice Centers do for our homeless community. Thank you so much for joining us, Olivia, and for sharing this link also so more people can get this information. We also have joining us today Maria de la Cruz Ortiz, Lupita Reyes, Alma Mejia, Horacio Vélez, Mari Rabago the best. Thank you so much for the shout out. I appreciate it. Paul Kotara, I love you, Mari. Well, thank you. Much love to you too. Thank you so much for those comments. Josefina Padredes, I am from Tusa. Is there some kind of center here? There are a lot of people here in a lot of parks asking for money on the stops.
Yeah, so here's my suggestion with that. Sometimes it's hard to figure out whether somebody is panhandling or whether they really need money because they need to eat. Yes. And so if you encounter somebody who is on a corner and says they're hungry, offer to go buy them some food and bring it back. But also when you do that, hand them a card or a pamphlet that says, here's where you can go for help. If they happen to be young, there's specific places for them. They can go to Tumbleweed, they can go to 1 in 10. If it's a family that's becoming homeless, they can contact the Family Housing Hub. They can be housed by UMOM. There's other organizations. There's Family Promise. There's other places. Justice Center is the only day resource center for homeless seniors in the United States.
In the United States?
In the United States. There's other places that are helping low-income seniors. There's other places that are helping indigent seniors, but we're the only ones that are helping homeless seniors. So we are the ones that kind of are setting the stage for how to help this population.
Trendsetters.
The fastest growing population of people who are going to be homeless are people with children and seniors. The senior population of homelessness is rising by 30% every year.
My God.
And it's because as we get older, some people aren't going to make it. They haven't saved enough. They haven't thought about what they're going to do. Or again, there's a catastrophic circumstance, and then, we have to think, part of what happens, Mari, is that there aren't enough affordable housing units. And so
Totally agree with you on that
and so
one.
when people want to say, well, how can I advocate and how can I help? That's what you need to do.
Now, with this dramatic statistics that Barbara had just shared with us, I would like to go back to Rudy.
Yes.
And how did Rudy ended up in Justice Center, and why Rudy's life has been a turnaround of 180 degree, and what are you doing now for people that actually walk in the shoes that you did years ago?
Okay. I ended up going to Justice Center. It was maybe now about 3 years ago. I had to have surgery on my back and my neck. I was in a scooter. I wasn't able to walk. And going to Justice Center, I finally realized that fighting for my disability at that point in time was taking me nowhere. And I approached Barbara and Mike, Michael Felder's my immediate boss, and I asked them for a chance for work. And they're looking at me in a scooter saying, like, well, what are you going to do? But as time progressed and I kept asking, they finally said, you know what, we're going to give you a shot. We're going to try to see if we can help you out. And I told them, this is the only way I can know how to be able to get out of being homeless. And I got into this program. It's called CSAP. It's
CSAP.
Yes. It's for this. It's ran by, I believe, AARP.
It's run by Area Agency on Aging
Yeah.
and
Okay.
AARP.
And I was able to get a part-time job there, and I was able to save enough money, and I got me an apartment. But not only that, by being there, I was able to start walking. I was walking around like a hunchback going to the Justice Center, but I was able to get my strength back. And I was able to get my motivation back and start feeling good about me again, and knowing that, hey, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to get out of being homeless.
Talk to us about that, Rudy, because I am sure a lot of people that are watching right now can identify. As Barbara said, 40% of our population were just one paycheck away from being homeless.
Yes.
So I know that when it comes to self-esteem, I know that when it comes to feeling value or important within our immediate family or community, that is a big part of how a lot of people end up being homeless. There's no appreciation. There's no caring and support like it used to be in our neighborhoods, you know, decades ago. Yeah. So we feel lonely in the middle of hundreds or thousands of people surrounding us all the time.
You hit it right on the nail, because I felt like that. My self-esteem was really low. I'm looking, you know, around me, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, how, and this was my biggest thing, was I always wanted to fight. How am I going to get back on myself? How am I going to get Rudy Solis? How am I going to find him again? What do I have to do? And then when I had my surgeries and I got in that scooter, I was like, wow, here's another obstacle. But, you know, Mary, I'm going to put it like this. Through the grace of God, all my transitions happened. Because
believing.
If I couldn't have surrendered myself to him and said, you know what, I'm going to give you my life and you take care of it. You make my decisions and let me walk it. He gave me the strength and the ability to be able to get my strength back to walk. He took me to Mike and Barbara and make me. I was in their offices maybe once, twice a week, asking him for a job.
You did not give up then.
No,
He was persistent,
no,
Barbara.
yes. And once I got my strength back, I met somebody there, and so that meant 2 people got into an apartment. 2 people lost from being homeless. My girl and I, we have an apartment
Wait
now.
a second. You're not only not homeless anymore, so you have a love story behind the whole thing. Look at that.
He found romance at Justice Center.
Romance,
He found
guys.
romance at Justice
And
Center.
for those of you that are wondering, how do I get a hold of Justice Center? How do I contribute to them? How do I work with them? Or how do I refer somebody that I know could be benefit from the services? Yes. Please make sure you take note of this number, which is being coming up in our during our conversations. But I'm going to mention it to you: 602-254-6524. Here we go again. 602-254-6524. That is the number where you can call. And Justice Center, as many other organizations, are doing wonderful things in our community. I'm assuming you don't only offer help, you also need the help of the community.
We do. When we move somebody into an apartment, we try to make sure that they have a bed. if you've been homeless and you move to an apartment, you have nothing, right? And so you're going to be in four walls. And so there's a chance that you're going to go back onto the street. It's just hard. So when we move people into an apartment, we make sure they have a bed. We make sure they have furniture. We make sure that they have everything they need to stock their kitchen, their bathroom, that they have cleaning supplies. And then the program that Rudy is now very involved with is the extended care program. And we're going to assign an ambassador or a friend to them. And that person's going to check on them and make sure that they're doing all right. And if they need a food box, or if they need cleaning supplies, or if they need a ride to the doctor, the ambassador and the friends at Justice Center that they have are going to take care of them. And so we have a 97% rate of people staying in housing after we place them in housing.
That's amazing. Congratulations for that amazing work you guys are doing. Rudy, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us. I'm sure you have inspired many of the people joining us in this conversation. You bring hope to a lot of them that are concerned for their loved ones or don't know how to help organizations like the one you and Barbara represent. So Justice Center, 602-254-6524 is the number. Thank you so much for Reina Montoya from Aliento for joining us today. We have Omar y Angelica Muñoz also. I'm not sure what camera I am, ladies, but I am like, there we go. Thank you so much. Hera Carmona also joining us. We have Claudia Fudova also with us, Tavo Sastre, and Monica Villalobos. Thank you so much for joining con Mary Rabago. I appreciate you guys visiting us today. From Justice Centers, Rudy and Barbara, the number 602-254-6524. We're going to go to a small break. And another of the issues that is very rooted in our community, unfortunately, keeps growing, destroying families, but also destroying dreams, is domestic violence. And domestic violence, it does not limit to somebody being hurt physically. There are many ways of domestic violence. We're going to talk about resources, but also how to identify it and what can we do as a community to fight back on this cycle that is destroying our communities, our families. This is Con Mary Rabago, Journalism with a Purpose. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
It has been a wonderful experience. I think that having the right level of information at all times to understand how together we can do a better job is great. You guys are great partners, and you took the time to understand why the campaign was important.
Is engage the community, so it becomes a conversation. It becomes a community project. When you call people together, thousands of people will come. There's no other agency can do that.
Mary's viewers are very loyal, very dedicated people to her, and so they trust her.
Mary Rabago Productions was much more timely, and the quality of the product when it was all said and done was fantastic.
We really do need a production company that understands not only the language, the culture, but has the professionalism.
We would support Mary Rabago's production in a professional manner. We know the quality, we know she is professional, and she has a team of people that are caring and very sensitive to the Latino issues in the United States.
My friend, do you want your children to fly as high as the eagles? With education, everything is possible. That is why Imagine Elementary College is the best option in the area. They provide the tools necessary to make sure your children are successful. Free transportation. Your children deserve the best, and that starts with a solid education. They provide classes that practice STEM, music, and sports. That is why I, Mary Rabago, recommend Imagine Elementary College, a free charter school. Call today, 520-723-5391. 520-723-5391. The basis of success is a good education for our children. That is why Imagine Prep College prepares them to succeed in the fields of greater demand in our economy, like science, technology, and engineering. With advanced academic instruction, choose Imagine Prep College for your children. Give them the best gift you could give them, a quality education for free. Call today, 520-424-2790. 520-424-2790. I, Mary Rabago, recommended.
I'm Jackie Lopez reporting from Phoenix. Today I came out here to ask people, what do they think about domestic violence? This is what they said.
It's violence that's occurring in relationships, such as spousal, marital, even if it's a partner that you're living with, and it could be like with amongst parents and stuff, like with your baby daddy, your baby mama.
One person who physically or emotionally abuses or tries to take advantage of another person in a situation.
It has to be like actual violence, like when a spouse or a child or a father or a parent of that sort decides to hit a person, or somebody who is like verbally abusive.
As you can see, all the people that I talked to today agreed that domestic violence is not only something physical but also emotional. Reporting from downtown Phoenix, I'm Jackie Lopez. This is Con Mary Rabago in English.
Thank you so much to Jacqueline Lopez with Mary Rabago Productions for this report. And that is what our community actually thinks about domestic violence. There's so many areas of domestic violence that we are not aware. Many of you probably watching us today are actually experiencing domestic violence. Domestic violence does not show up only with, a physically sign of being abused. There are areas within the relationship that go beyond anything you can see at first hand. There's domestic violence, sexually abuse, there is psychologically, financial abuse, withholding emotion, affection. There's so many aspects, but to learn a little bit more and to learn about the resources within our community also, we're honored to have today Con Mary Rabago, our next guest. That is Marina Jessup. I'm getting there. And also joining us is Yvonne Blas from De Colores. Thank you so much, ladies, for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
De Colores is a shelter for domestic violence very close to my heart. For many years, I had the opportunity to join, to talk to the clients that you guys, help there, serve there in many aspects, and also have the honor of telling their stories, which it's a way that I was able to be educated on domestic violence, which is so rooted within our families and our community that unfortunately we see it like it's something natural. Am I wrong, ladies?
No, you're absolutely right. The Colores has the shelter. We also are now in the community. Mm-hmm. We are trying to, put services out there and educate the community on providing services and resources to women before they need that final step of getting to a shelter.
So in other words, you guys have extended the services where you go into prevention mode more than just serving the clients. You are reaching within the community, correct, the education part of it. But I would like to focus this part of our show in educating our community. People are joining us, and I'm going to ask you to start sharing this link so more people can join that conversation. Domestic violence is a serious issue in our community that has many, many effects within our society, not only within the family. And we don't know what domestic violence, which of you two can explain to us what domestic violence is and in what kind of forms can we identify it? How do we identify? Because many of us have been raised in families or environments that it might be something normal for many of them.
Right. And that's a really good point. But domestic violence includes, as you were saying, verbal. So verbal can be name calling, cutting somebody down, making them feel smaller than the other person. It also includes physical. emotional abuse, psychological abuse, economic abuse, sexual. So there's various forms. And you're right. When you're raised in that type of environment, that's your normal. So you don't think that there's violence happening in the home until somebody else sees it or maybe something worse happens. So, yeah.
Now, one more question for you guys, because I know a lot of people think that domestic violence only happens in low-income households with lack of education, with not much, higher education. Can you explain to our community, where does domestic violence live?
I think it lives everywhere. I don't think there's anybody that's immune to being involved in domestic violence. I mean, you hear every day about athletes that are involved in domestic violence. There are Hollywood stars that have been victims of domestic violence. So I don't think it pertains to one particular person.
Now, for those women listening to us that have daughters, do you believe that just because your daughter or you are a woman that have higher education, are you immune to domestic violence?
No, not at all. There's a saying that says domestic violence does not discriminate against class, gender, race, religion. So a lot of times if women are experiencing domestic violence, there can be a pattern and a habit where young girls grow up thinking that this type of behavior is normal, and then they end up in a relationship that is abusive. So, yeah.
Now, domestic violence, it does not limit it to, the husband and wife. Now we're seeing cases more and more often between our teens as they're dating.
Yes, there is a higher, we're trying to educate the teens in high schools too about healthy relationships, learning that, to have your partner respect who you are, respect your boundaries, and I think teaching them healthy relationships in high school so that when they become adults, then they know and recognize what a healthy relationship is.
And let's not forget that domestic violence also happens from women to men, or nowadays with so many outbursts of the same sex couples, men are also victims of domestic violence. It's not limited only to women.
Right. And so then it's harder for men. We've noticed a trend where it's harder for men to reach out because
to ask for help.
They are the men, So, yeah, it happens in LGBTQ communities. We see higher rates of it in the LGBTQ communities. But, yeah, you're right. There's a high incidence in men. I did a study once where it's just as equal with men as victims as women. So.
I remember through my years of journalism, I did a series that it was titled "The Victims Are Them" as men. Not, the women. In Spanish was "Las víctimas son ellos." And it was shocking for me, even, that I thought I knew much about domestic violence. When I got to interview this man that had been victim of domestic violence to the extent, or the family of one of them that was killed by, his wife in many aspects. But we don't talk about these subjects within our community, whether it's the Latino community with machismo. It's so strong. It's still nowadays in our families, whether it's the African American community or just the Anglo community. Still, there's a taboo behind domestic violence. There's a social status that you have to cover up always. There's appearance that you have to cover on. And that cycle keeps repeating. Now, going beyond the physical abuse, I would love to emphasize a little bit more when it comes to the different areas of domestic violence and how we can identify that so we can ask for help, because the aggressor, the abuser, actually needs help also. It's not only the victim that needs the help within this situation.
Yeah, one of the things that we've found is that about 99% of victims of domestic violence will experience financial abuse.
Financial abuse.
Yes.
Meaning having the control.
They don't get access to the funds to be able to go, buy what they need for the home. They're given an allowance. They don't have that financial freedom to pick up and leave when they want to, or to decide this isn't working. We're going to go our separate ways. They're financially, a lot of times that's why they stay, is because financially they can't be on their own.
I remember interviewing one of your clients not too long ago. We did a special show on domestic violence with the Colores through Mary Rabago production. She was 56 years old, and it was the first time in her life that she got to pay a bill by herself. She's been a victim of domestic violence. She was shot, stabbed, ran over with a vehicle by her ex-husband. She had to leave from a different state to Arizona in order to survive in many ways. Cut, strings with her own children in order for her to survive. And it was very emotional as she was sharing with me that it was the first time in her life that she actually had money in her hands, and she was able to pay a bill. She never knew what that was. Imagine a 56-year-old woman experiencing that for the first time. Now, the financial aspect is a huge part of domestic violence, but one of them that nowadays we are seeing more, but we talk less about it. It's Marina, if you can spend a little bit on this, is the kind of withholding affection or attacking the self-esteem of the person. What kind of domestic violence is that, where you don't show the love or you negotiate with that kind of affection acts? And that is domestic violence also, because you're affecting the self-esteem of the person, whether it's a man or a woman in the relationship.
Well, that can be probably emotional or psychological abuse. But what happens and what we see a lot is the abuser will blame the victim. So it definitely will affect their self-esteem because they blame themselves for just about everything. So when there's abuse that's happening, whether it's verbal, emotional, psychological, or physical, a lot of times the abuser is blaming the victim, saying, see, if you wouldn't have acted like this, or if you wouldn't have done that,
I would still be loving with you.
Yes. Yeah, so they blame the victim. So then, yeah, when they come in, their self-esteem is very low. So, yeah, we deal with that a lot.
And that's usually the beginning of a cycle of domestic violence. Then it picks up, it grows in many aspects. Then it starts escalating into the financial spectrum. It starts escalating into the physical violence, the verbal.
Yes, and it definitely gets worse every time. It can start off with just, the emotional, the put downs, the withholding the affection. But it's going to escalate, and every time it escalates, it's going to get worse until, the ending of the traumatic one, the fatality.
In many aspects. And the Colores is one of those phone numbers that I unfortunately, or, and the positive aspects, I have shared the most, I think, through my, lives here in Arizona. It's a number that I have memorized for many years because you would not believe the number of people that reach out to me asking for resources. 602-269-1515 is the number for the shelter, domestic violence shelter, De Colores from Chicanos por la Causa. 602-269-1515. There is help, and they cannot help every victim, every person there, but you do have the resources to send them to different organizations, including men, correct?
Right, and that's where we come in, Yvonne and I, because we don't work directly with the shelter. We're outside in the community. So whether people don't want to go into a shelter, maybe they're not ready to leave their abusive relationship, there's help. So we work with individuals out in the community. We have a center here in Phoenix. So we have legal advocacy, case management, support groups, empowerment groups. We have youth workshops. We're pretty engaging a transitional housing program. So we do what we can to help the people in the community, so those who are not in a shelter.
Well, that's amazing. And all these resources are very close to you when you call 602-269-1515. De Colores Domestic Violence Shelter. They also work with a lot of different organizations providing resources. Yes. But the main thing, this conversation I would love to leave our people, our community with, is the education, the lack of education we have as a community when it comes to domestic violence. A lot of these situations could be stopped before a family has to end up a woman and their kids, or a man looking for shelter. If we had this kind of education within our community, if we know how to identify domestic violence in early stages and get the treatment and the help that we need, not only for the victim, but also for the aggressor or the abuser, correct?
Correct. I mean, I think if we can open up the communication, maybe more families could be saved, and, recognizing their behaviors and, finding a way to change that.
Well, that is an amazing opportunity that you have, and you can support the work that De Colores is doing, but just by sharing this link, so more people will get the information. Thank you, Marilyn Soon, for translating for us. Usually, Con Mary Rabago is Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 11 in Spanish. A lot of people say, why is it not in Spanish? Well, this is our new show every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Con Mary Rabago, now also in English for you, because a lot of you were asking for this kind of resources and information. We are pleased to be able to provide you this information now. Kenneth Patricio Smith, great show and message. Thank you, Mari. Thank you so much, Patricio, for joining us today. We have also Anivet Gonzalez with us. Angelica Macias, thank you, Mari, for this great topic. Already shared the link. Thank you so much for doing that. That way more people can get the information. Barbara is saying De Colores is a wonderful asset to our community. How many years serving the community by now?
It's been a long time. They opened up in the 70s and just continue to grow.
They've been over 30 years.
Over 30 years. Almost my 21 years of age. Why are you laughing? You didn't believe me that one, right? Linda Valenzuela, wow, what a great show. Thank you for all the information from domestic violence to senior homeless, an issue that hurts my heart very much. Thank you so much, Linda Valenzuela, for your support in our productions, in our shows, in our purpose, which is journalism with a purpose. What could you tell the people out there that are watching? They're afraid of asking for help. They're afraid of they're going to be separated by their kids if they look for the help and support that they need.
That first step is reaching out, and the unknown is always scary. But when they take that step into the unknown, the steps appear. So it's just a matter of making that decision to reach out. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to leave their abusive relationship, but at least take a step for help and to know that they have rights, that they have options, that they have a place to go where they can be supported and where they can get the resources that they might need.
Well, I would like for you to walk us a little bit, Yvonne, for the help that there is in legal-wise for the victims of domestic violence. Because a lot of people are threatened, like if they're in a situation that they're from other countries and they don't have a legal status here, and they might think that there's no support or no resources for them. Can you walk us through that situation?
Of course. One of the things that we can do, we can assist them with obtaining an order of protection that would help legally keep an aggressor or abuser away from them, so that they're able to try to, reorganize themselves and move on. But another thing that we can do if someone's undocumented, being a victim of crime, which domestic violence is a crime, we can look at the possibility of being eligible for a U visa or VAWA, which is under the Violence Against Women's Act. Obtaining a work permit or even a legal residency here.
But there's also the legal service for custody, because a lot of the cycles or situations of domestic violence, whether you're legal or not here with the status here in the United States, there's the threat of, you're not working. I'm the support of the house, economic, financial abuse, like you mentioned, and the court will give me the kids, the custody. And that's the big fear when it comes to domestic violence victim.
I think that's a big fear, especially as a mother. The biggest fear is to lose your children. And we are there to support in that aspect as well, whether it's, connecting them with an attorney that can help them with custody and divorce, letting them know what their rights are as far as, parenting with the other, with the father of the children. I know a lot of mothers don't want to separate their kids from their father, and it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be, that's a separate relationship, so we teach them about, encouraging that relationship, the relationship with the children and the father. Yes, co-parenting. Doing it in a successful way. So we definitely touch on that too.
What would be the advice, Marina, that you would give to those people that have grown up in domestic violence situations, that they have seen this among their parents and they're afraid to start relationships, particular men that could be watching us today? What would be the resources for them to get help to, stop the cycle of domestic violence within their, lineage?
I would say counseling. There's plenty of resources out there that offer domestic violence counseling. There's support groups. But we do see that the violence does affect children, and there can be a lot of fear. There can even be post-traumatic stress. So I would definitely recommend counseling, and just Google the internet, look for support groups or anything domestic violence related to assist someone in getting into, the help that they need.
The information. For your work in your community, what is the most common question that you get asked when you approach somebody that is dealing with domestic violence? What is the biggest fear, more than the question, I should say?
I would say the biggest fear is losing their family. Yeah. So most women especially, that's a common threat. We serve, the majority of our clients are Hispanic. And the culture, as you know, is family-oriented. There's stigmas attached to the culture. You got married, this is where you have to stay.
Oh, yes. Being a single mom is not a fun thing.
Right. And so then I would say that the biggest fear is losing their children, or what is the community going to think? What is my family going to think? So
we're still in that area that we're more concerned about what other people think than the kind of quality of a lifestyle that we're providing for our families or for ourselves, right, in many aspects.
Yeah, I think that's a difficult task to do too, is to teach, as mothers we're so used to taking care of everyone else, to teach them about what's important for them.
Take care of yourself. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a task.
Now, when you do those services of education within the community that you see, how can you provide the kind of services in group scenarios? Like if there's an organization that would love to have you guys come and talk to them about this, is that resource available to them?
Yes, definitely. We do domestic violence awareness presentations. So that's part of what we do. We educate the community. So we do go out, City of Phoenix or even police departments, and we train on domestic violence, what it looks like, what it entails, the cycle of abuse. We offer support groups or empowerment groups at our Maryvale Center. So we're educating individuals as well. And I can't tell you how many times we see the light bulbs go off in people's faces, not knowing that they were even going through abuse or that certain things were considered abusive behavior.
In many aspects, and that's where the question came from, because I know a lot of people that are watching us right now, that are listening to the conversation, they may be victims of domestic violence. We don't know how to recognize domestic violence because it's such a big spectrum of abuse that is under the same umbrella. Sudden behaviors that we take as normal in our relationships or within the way we're raised. Or am I wrong in that aspect?
No, you're absolutely right. I think the important thing to remember is relationships are mutual, and it should be equal. And I think that's where we get, well, he's the husband, he's the man, or in control of everything. He's supposed to be in control. But as long as there's mutual respect and mutual understanding, then I think that's where, you don't know if you're in an abusive relationship or not. When you look at, is it one-sided, or are we, mutually respectful to each other?
How do we teach this generation, Marina, respect? Not only the respect to the partner, to your boyfriend, to your husband, and vice versa. How to demand or expect that respect also as a person. But in an era where our millennials, our teens, they are confusing the topic of being equal to break in the boundaries of respect in many aspects.
Right. So there's a motto that we have, and it's called love shouldn't hurt. So ultimately, if somebody is being hurt, whether it's emotional or physical, that's a big sign. So ultimately, love should not hurt. So the second thing is we should look at honoring ourselves first and knowing that we deserve the respect, and there's also that saying where we treat teach people how to treat us, that's true. So I think in teaching individuals that they are worth more, they're worth more than having an abusive relationship. So that's kind of where we start, is just knowing that each person is valuable and they don't deserve to be abused.
From your experience, what is it, the type of domestic violence that is more common nowadays? Is it the physical abuse? Is it the verbal abuse? Is it the emotional and psychological abuse? Or they go by stages?
I would say it's verbal and emotional, because a lot of times people don't realize that verbal is domestic violence. Yeah. At least in our world, in the domestic violence world, verbal abuse is domestic violence. So just to know that is a big key.
Now, when you talk about verbal abuse, is it only, name calling, using tones in the way that we communicate, or is it when they start affecting you with their comments or the lack of, positive comments toward you, where they start working to minimize their self-esteem?
Exactly. It's cutting them down. It's name calling. It's minimizing their self-esteem. Ultimately just trying to make the other person feel less than them.
I think we look at in relationships, we're not saying, oh, you're never going to argue or you disagree. Of course you are. It's
happens. Part of a relationship.
Yeah, it is. But I think the limit is, are they doing it to intentionally hurt you, to intentionally keep you down, to make you feel less than, yeah.
How do we talk to our kids about domestic violence, particularly when we've been part of a domestic violence situation and they have experienced and witnessed that also? How do we break the cycle as parents, men and women?
Well, we teach them by our behavior. So if somebody is allowing domestic violence to occur in their home, they're teaching their children that that's okay. But there's various reasons, and we know why people choose to stay in a relationship. But I think having a conversation with your children and letting them know that this isn't right, the verbal or the physical behavior isn't right, and it should not be happening. And just being honest, kids are a lot more receptive, and a lot of times they know what's going on, even when we think that they don't know. So,
what is the population, Yvonne, that is experiencing more domestic violence nowadays? Is it elderly? If it's teens? Is it women? Is it men? Is it LGBT?
Well, I think it's growing in teens. Definitely, we've seen a growing number in teens that are in unhealthy relationships. But I think the majority, 20 to 24, that age is a really high risk of.
20 to 24.
Yes.
Now, these are the kids that have higher education. They have more education than us or our parents and our grandparents. Why then domestic violence would be growing in this kind of population?
I think that maybe just because societally it might be acceptable, but I was reading or attended a workshop where it was saying that actually the disabled community is one of the highest, if not the highest population of domestic violence. So yeah, I think it was like 1 in every 3 disabled persons are abused.
High statistics that make us think, because domestic violence also could be from parents to kids and kids to parents, or a disabled member of the family, as you mentioned, in 1 in 3. That's very, very high. We have it coming from Ana Ricardo Regalado. Zero tolerance. It should not happen, and it's really easy to say that. I'm sure most of we agree that it's zero tolerance and that it should not happen. But is it or not the truth that many of the victims of domestic violence do not know they being victim of domestic violence until their self-esteem is so low that they don't feel like there's a way out, and they did not identify that at an early stage?
Exactly. And so we look at, that's one of the things that we teach, because the question is always, why does a person stay? But there's so many reasons why a person stays. They could be dependent on that person economically. They don't want to break up the family. It's easy to point the finger when you're not in that situation. So there's also a term called victim blaming, where a lot of individuals blame the victim. But I once heard, we shouldn't really be asking, why is this person allowing this type of behavior? The real question should be, why is the abuser continuing this abusive behavior?
Now, when you talk about the abuser, most of the time, these are men, young men or older men, that saw the same behavior growing up. They continue the cycle.
Right. The majority of the time, that is what happens. Is we need to learn to break that cycle. I think a lot of times women too don't know where to go for help. A lot of times they feel like no one believes them. Maybe because the abuser has a good personality and very
charming.
Yes, and so everyone believes
what they see on the outside.
Right. So when they feel like they don't know where to go or who to go to, then they just stay, and they don't know how to reach out.
In this